Welcome back, everybody. Appreciate you guys coming on the channel. Today we have Marc. He's back again. Already had our workout together. Now we're gonna have our food talk together. So Marc, just gonna hop right into it right now. When it comes to title occupation, what is your job? What's your title?
Basically right now, doing a full-time student type deal. I've done the military thing, 14 years. Honorably discharged from that. Then I worked with the county. So, I was a public servant for 15 years as well, and I kind of want to try to find myself, after life took me down a certain path, and I kind of wanted to be the person that people enjoy seeing, because in public servant, when you get called out, it's usually for something bad, so you're always that person they see, they're here, what have you. So, I kind of life kind of took me down the curve. And, I said, I'm going to go to school, I'm going to get some education, I'm going to start bettering and empowering my mind, to do different aspects in life and to teach people more and, learn different trades. So, I'm kind of tapering off that and looking forward to seeing what's out there, but I think I really enjoy training people and getting people to move. I think that's my biggest thing.
Beautiful.
So that's pretty much where I'm at right now.
Good stuff. And as every trainer should, right? The enjoyment of working with folks.
Absolutely. You've got to be 100% into it. Mind, body, spirit, and soul. Mm-hmm. You've got to love the human body. You've got to love what it can do, what it's capable of doing. Mm-hmm. And especially for those who are not as fortunate to be able to do all the things that, I can't say normal because normal to you is different to me and vice versa. But for those people who maybe have a disability, still helping them out in whatever way possible and whatever condition they're in and whatever they can subject their body to, And I think that's part of training that a lot of trainers that I've experienced say, you know what, I don't want to work with a paraplegic, or, it's going to be hard for me to work with somebody, who's bound to a wheelchair. Yeah. So I try to look at that aspect, and is it going to be hard, difficult, something out of our realm? Absolutely it is. Mm-hmm. Because we're used to coming out here grounding and pounding, getting everything done. I expect you to be able to do everything I can do and vice versa.
Yes, sir.
And then, now you get somebody who is unfortunate that they can't do those things. So you kind of got to taper down your workouts, and you got to kind of critique them to what they're able to do, so that's the kind of aspect in training that, I'd like to do.
Beautiful. Yes, sir. Now, right now we're sitting in the very nice Texas Hill Country, very beautiful out here, but are you originally from this part of the States?
No, sir. I'm originally born and raised down in the Panhandle.
Okay.
I was born in a health center. It's probably got population 200 people. My mother was Lubbock bound, which is probably about 45 miles from there.
Gotcha.
In order to get me to a good hospital, but I just couldn't wait, obviously. So I was born at about 4:19 in the morning in a health center there on I-27 between Lubbock and Plainview.
And when you say Panhandle, Texas, correct?
Panhandle, Texas.
Because some people from Oklahoma, they get confused.
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, Panhandle, North Texas up there. Mm-hmm. And, born and raised, grew up in Lubbock, around cattle, farm, goats, the whole 9 yards. Picked cotton in high school and baled hay and, picked some watermelons, onions, corn. And, that was my lifestyle, all through high school until I joined the military in 99. So.
Very cool. So big agriculture. And then do you try to stick with that to this day? Like, do you still, because I know growing up, a lot of people, they kind of go back to ag if they can. They start gardens, they get animals if they can. Do you also keep up with that?
I'm getting that itch again. I've been telling, the ones closest to me that I'd like to go out and get my goats back and get my farming stuff back and, kind of live out on my own, out there in the country again. So that itch is coming back 47 years later.
Sheesh. And it comes around, I think, eventually for most
Absolutely
of us.
Absolutely it does.
Growing up and everything with different types of foods, and you said you had a lot of at least grown foods nearby. What was your favorite food as a kid?
I think my favorite food growing up that I had accessible to me at the time was probably fish sticks and rice. Yeah.
That works. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I remember my mom, till this day, she says, oh, you remember when I used to make you fish sticks? And, you know, they were the Captain something, I don't know. They're still around. They're still in the yellow box. I can still see the little captain wearing the blue hat.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and yeah, I remember that. So I think that probably had to have been my favorite food, you know, that amongst the sliced spam,
Oh, yeah.
you know, growing up,
Yes,
and the bologna sandwiches, and yeah, so had to have been the fish and rice.
Ain't bad. White rice?
White rice.
White rice.
Absolutely.
Hey? Sheesh.
Absolutely.
Now, for making a meal like that, I'm assuming your mom, would she mainly be the main cook for the house?
Yes.
Everything cook for all of you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dad was always working. You know, he was a public servant as well. You know, so he worked a lot of holidays, a lot of birthdays. He missed a lot of that stuff. So he was always working. So my mom kind of filled in, you know, a lot, especially in the sports and all that good stuff, you know, throughout the day. And she did 40 years in at Southwestern Bell. It used to be Bell South, Southwestern Bell, and then now what we know is AT&T.
Yeah.
So she did 40 years there. So, but yeah. So come from a family of hard workers.
Beautiful. Okay. And was it the type of family structure where every single night you would come down and everybody would sit at the dinner table, have meals together?
For the most part, yeah. I can honestly say, yeah. You know, when the street lights came on, riding my bicycle back to the house, put it in the backyard, and you know, it's time for dinner and time for bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeez, before we had any of these guys to block our minds.
Oh, I wouldn't even.
Hey.
Yeah, I wouldn't even been to imagine. I think we had the Atari back then.
Yeah, heck, that's when Nintendo was slowly crawling out. They didn't have an empire yet,
Yeah,
but they were
absolutely.
building something.
The
Man,
Atari.
we fast forward to the future now, away from the family, but with you and your schedule, training clients, public servant to this day, how do you structure your meal plans? Are you able to eat breakfast at home? Do you have to pack most of your meals? What does a day in the life of Marc look like for eating?
Well, during my class schedules, you know, I would definitely try to pack my morning lunch, my morning meal. You know, till this day, I'm looking at about trying to get about 4,400 calories a day, you know, just to maintain. And I'm kind of on a gaining curve right now. But 4,400 calories is probably where I'm at. You know, probably 300 grams of protein and probably 219 grams of carbs.
300 grams of protein.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Right.
it's a lot. Yeah, it's a lot of protein. It's very hard, but anyway, you know, I try to pack a good breakfast. You know, 4 boiled eggs. And I know you've seen me. You know, if I can get a breakfast bowl, you know, I'll do that with the hash browns. You know, a little bit of gravy, 4 scrambled eggs. You know, maybe a slice of bacon. You know, the protein.
Yes, sir.
Or a sausage, and then you know, I'll usually eat a good lunch, you know, with those pops, and we'll meet somewhere. And he makes sure I get a good hefty plate.
Good.
Usually my favorites, you know, the panini meatballs.
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
from a Jason's Deli or something, and then you know, I'll eat a good dinner as well, and snacks in between. So yeah, I try to pack on them calories, and as long as I know I'm gonna burn them off, you know. Utilize what I eat, you know, because I want to fuel myself, because I know I'm going to work out that day. You know, I do have my splurge days as well, you know, on the weekends and stuff like that, you know, where I kind of get off routine and just kind of supplement, you know, some of the things that I may not eat during the week, you know. So just try to keep that balance and that flow, you know, everything in moderation.
Yes, sir.
You know, I know we talked about that earlier, so, but, you know, too much of anything is usually not good. So everything in moderation.
Very wise. Excellent. What's funny is you bring up Jason's Deli. The new group of students I have, kind of after you finished your time in, all these new students, they get crazy about Jason's Deli.
Really?
There's a
right
handful
next
of
door?
them. Yeah, there's a handful of them. They'll just run over there anytime they get a break. They'll grab something. That's ironic. And it's good. Jason's Deli's all right. It's not bad.
Yeah.
Before we even started working out this morning, what did you have for breakfast today?
2 boiled eggs and a banana on the way over here. I've got a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in there waiting for me right now. And I had probably about 28 ounces of water. Okay. And then in here I've got my hydration packet, and then probably another 20 ounces or so.
Beautiful.
So yeah, that's what I had up here because I knew we were gonna hit it pretty good and
Yes, sir.
shaking and moving. You know, I didn't want to eat a whole breakfast to where, you know, my stomach's just gonna be against me, you
Yeah.
know, while we're doing all this. So, you know, it was a kind of light breakfast.
I think that's good. Like I said, potassium, sugars from the banana, also fats, proteins from the eggs.
Yep.
But I love that you brought up water because most people, they're like, I'll drink 2 cups before I work out. It's like, it takes a little bit of time to process. So that's good. I love the fact you brought that up.
And are you a cold water guy or are you a lukewarm water guy?
And this man knows I keep everything in my fridge and it's always cold.
Always cold.
But that's like another reason I love the thermoses is because if I'm working out outside, I'll usually roll with a thermos. What about you? Lukewarm?
I'm lukewarm.
Lukewarm.
Yeah. You know, I just know that helps a little bit more in the digestive tract. You know, it's a little easier for your body not to have to convert something that enters it that's cold.
True,
and
yeah.
it starts, you know, working to, you know, get it at a regulated body temperature.
Yeah, that is
You know,
true.
so, and those are a lot of the key points that I try to keep in mind to where my energy is being spent, you know, especially on workout days. So, you know, I keep everything loop, you know, just try to resolve that way.
That's wise. And especially out here, like, I think it's going to be maybe high 90s today with a decent amount of humidity. Yeah, you don't want to kind of cold spike yourself, so that makes sense, especially on a day like today. If you were on, kind of I always like throwing kind of a ballpark question almost, kind of out there.
All right.
If you were on death row, Marc, hopefully never will be, but if you were on death row and you had your last meal, what would your last meal be?
6-ounce filet from Texas Roadhouse, medium rare. 2 sweet potatoes with all the fixings, side of okra, and you know what? What the hell? Large cup of Dr. Pepper.
Dr. Pepper.
Why not?
That's a true Texan statement right there. Dr. Pepper. That's
Yep.
great.
That's what automatically comes to my mind. My last meal. Yeah, I'm gonna rock some beef.
That's pretty good. Now you say Texas Roadhouse, you said? Why of all the steakhouses or places, why Texas
Just
Roadhouse?
from my experience, they always get it right. You know, yeah, Longhorn. You know, Texas Longhorns, they have some good stuff as well.
Yeah.
But it seems like every once in a while I have to say, hey, you know, this is not cooked right, or you know, something. But Texas Roadhouse, as soon as that thing hits the platter, every time like clockwork.
Really?
Hey, did y'all guys cut into your steak? Sure. Pops cut it into it, flay it open, and there it is, just like wine's falling from the heavens. You know? Wow. Hemoglobin flowing on the plate, you know, ready to eat. So,
I like I said, I guess for me, I always know them for their rolls, and you know their sides are good and everything, but I seldom will order like a steak from them. I'll usually wait to another steakhouse, but you've got me thinking, Marc. Like maybe I should, you know, next time I go there, invest in that and less the chicken or the sides, maybe.
yeah. Hey, it's worth the try. Not expect a call shortly after.
Yeah, that's. Thank you. No, yeah, absolutely. Heck yeah. So from our conversation over there, we were talking a little bit about how important when you started working out and everything. You said back in 2013 was your time. That's whenever you decided to get your own workouts in. But you also mentioned nutrition. Do you think, as professional trainer, as an individual, do you think health is 50% nutrition, 50% exercise, or do you think it's a different combination just for the bodily health?
90-10.
90-10.
90% nutrition, 10% workout.
Okay.
All day long. You know, we tell people at our gym all the time. I kid you not, David. Probably every night we have somebody approach us at the gym asking for some kind of advice. And, you know, I've got 4 right now that are on nutrition plans, and we tell them 90% is what happens at the dinner table. 90% is the discipline that they may not have at that current point, but it's something that they can learn if they want to. If they want this certain type of body, if they want this certain type of physique, then that's where it's going to have to happen. You know, so they can work out all day long. They can work out as hard as they want, And if they go home and eat 4 Snickers bars and a couple of Crunch bars and, 4 or 5 donuts, what does it matter? What does it help? What are they gaining? So I think just, and again, in my personal opinion, and through the nutrition courses and, through the NASM training and all this stuff, that my recommendation would be 90-10. I tell them, when you get that 10% in the gym, you give it your all. Every time we go to the gym, leave nothing at the table. You're there, you did the hard part like we talked about. You got to the gym, you walked through the doors, you got here, you put feet on the grass, you're ready to go. That's the hard part. Leaving everything else behind, leaving your family, whatever, the kids are at daycare, the dogs are fed, whatever it is that's going on in their life. You decided to put all that away and to better yourself for whatever reason. Everybody's got a different reason for it.
Yes.
And I tell them that 10%, it's minimal, but if you do it to the best you can, give everything you got, that 10%, you're going to see results. Then you go home and you implement 90% of nutrition.
Love it, Marc.
And you're going to continue to see results.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I wish, like you mentioned, it seems like 10% is not a big deal, but it's what gets you over the edge, gets you over the hump for most people.
I believe so.
That's the reason I tell my students and stuff all the time. The reason I love teaching nutrition is because people can go their whole lives without working out. A lot of our ancestors, they didn't work out. They just had jobs. That was it. They came home, they ate, they went back to their jobs. That was pretty much it. But nobody can survive without food. Nobody can survive without water.
Nope.
And so that I'm not going to say I completely agree with it, because I don't want to be partial, but
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I love that concentration, because I tell people you have to have it. Without it, you can't do anything.
Can't. You need to fuel that machine. For whatever reason you have, everybody's got different reasons, and like I said before, and yours is different from mine, and vice versa, and everybody else's, especially everybody else watching, you may have a different way of thinking or a different need for food. Maybe you're out in Alaska and you need to keep warm, and that's your body's energy storage.
Yeah, that's right. Absolutely.
Everybody's different.
Mm-hmm. So currently, with you saying about 90% nutrition, 10% exercise, if you could describe your relationship with food with one word, just one word, what would the one word be?
Moderation.
Moderation, okay. You don't have to, but if you'd like to explain.
For me, if I don't eat in moderation, I was about 300 pounds before, believe it or not. Size 42 jeans in the waist, and I've got pictures to prove it. If I didn't want this lifestyle, because it is a lifestyle. It's not a fad, it's not a TikTok, you've got to make it a lifestyle.
Absolutely.
In order to change. So if I didn't want this lifestyle, if I didn't want to be able to help myself, first of all, and to be able to help others, then I would have just stayed on that track, and I would have stayed overweight, out of shape, calling on somebody else to help me. But I decided in my mind that it'd be best for my career to help others, and then 2, for me personally, to be able to take care of myself and to take care of others whenever that need may come, that day may come. So, moderation.
Moderation.
Everything in moderation. So,
respect it, sir. I love
that'd be my one word.
Yeah, and I love asking that question, because everybody's had a different word, man. And sometimes I think people will say a word and they'll think it's negative. They'll be like, out of control, or confused. That's another one that I've heard, I think. But with it, it's like, it's personal. That's why I tell people, you don't have to explain it to me. But everybody has different relationship with food, and I can't know everything about your relationship or your past. But every time I hear about it, I love hearing about it. I love hearing about people's stories. So you talked about 2013 is around the time frame that you started taking, exercising, eating correctly. That gentleman back in 2013, if you could give him any advice that you've learned all the way 13 years down the road right now, what advice would you give that man?
One word: discipline.
Discipline.
Discipline yourself. You know, I shot a lot of one words out, but those are the ones that really mean a lot to me. And you know, and again, I've got to give it to the man sitting behind the camera, you know, over here, because 2013, that's when we walked through that gate over there, and we started CrossFit. You know, so that's kind of where my journey began, and the word discipline really came into effect, you know, in my, I guess, in my body change regime. You know,
Yes,
I have to be disciplined. I have to make it to the gym. You know, I have to start eating right. And you kind of think of it, and that's the only word that really fits.
Yeah.
You know, you can say I want or this and that, but it really boils down to discipline.
And I'll go a little bit in more in depth with it. What makes you, Marc? What makes you want to be disciplined in your life?
Experiences. You know, good, bad, ugly, indifferent. You know, I think we're all handed cards, and how you play them is how things go on the table.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was handed a certain deck of cards, and you know, that's what I played. It may have not been the ace, and may have not been the king or queen. You know, hell, it was probably the diamond, the two of diamonds.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
But it's all how you look at it and take it, and you know, try to overcome, you know, the obstacles in life. And you know, like you, military man, you know, we've all seen a lot, been through a lot, you know, and it's all how you perceive your experiences.
Yes,
You know, if you want to change, if you want to better and empower yourself, and you know, so be it. If you want to sit in self-pity all day long and not do anything about it, you know, the help is there, obviously.
Yeah.
You, me, all the coaches in the world, people like Pops back here, you know, lending that hand. But you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
Yes, sir.
You know, so you know, I've had the ones that want to do it. You know, their intentions are good, just not disciplined enough to do it. So, and I don't fault them. You know, I just tell them, hey, we'll try again later. So that's my outlook.
No, I think it's good, and I loved how you said experience, because they don't have the same experience. I've talked to something I talk to my students about is I tell people I don't nowadays, because of my job, I don't train clients unless I know they have some sort of discipline or they're desperate for it. I said, if you're not desperate, and I'm sure this probably goes hand in hand with experience, a bad experience makes people desperate. You know, it makes people want to crawl out of their situation no matter what it takes. And I only train those people, because anybody else, like you said, they won't understand how bad they have to have it unless they've had that experience. Usually negative. Unfortunately, it's usually negative. But yeah, I love that answer, Marc.
You're right. And you know, I'm one to tell you that you know, rock bottom has a basement.
That's a good way to put
it.
Yeah.
And you know, some people experience that, and some people are fortunate enough not to. You know, but you know, it's there, and the only way is up. You know, so it's a drive, it's a push, it's hard. You know, nothing easy ever comes in life that's, you know, it's easy.
Yes,
you know, nothing good ever comes from it. You know, you may be fortunate here and there and find that good grace, but other than that, you know, you got to work hard for a lot of things in life.
Yes,
and your body's no different. Nutrition's no different. You know, it's all discipline and moderation.
Absolutely, sir. Beautifully said. So before we do kind of closing statements for everybody, I was going to ask Marc, do you have any questions? Because I've been drilling you this whole time. Do you have any questions for me, sir, before we do our final closing statements?
What would be your number one goal taking this position as being an instructor, you know, other than, you know, being a personal trainer?
Gotcha.
You know?
Okay. Well, thank you for asking, Mark. For those guys that don't know, or anybody who doesn't know, I currently do teach NASM courses, so personal fitness training. I also specifically teach nutrition, the nutrition aspects of that. And so, I mean, my goal with that, man, is really, if I'm just being honest, and I want my guests to be honest, I need to be honest. I kind of fell into the position originally. I never wanted to be a teacher ever in my life. And it sounds funny because like now people think that, oh, Mr. Shaw got hired because he must have that background. Didn't have a background for it, never had a knack for it. But when I got the job, there was something just inside me that said, go for it. I had a steady job at the time, but I didn't have one that required a nutrition degree. I didn't have one that had an exercise sports science degree behind it. And this was the time. And so I decided, you know what, I'll go for it. I'll see what I can do. And what I realized really fast when I went into the classroom was I took this job for me, but it can't just be about me forever. Every single one of these students has a destiny. And whether I like it or not, I'm going to be a part of it. And if I could just help one of them, because there's a lot of times, you'll be in class teaching and half the people are on their phones and other people, they've had a rough night because the kids kept them up. I understand that, But if I could just help one of them be a good coach, a good trainer, how many lives could they change? How many people could they change? And so really my goal, it's not a long-term goal. It's not a short-term goal. It's just if I could help one person make it as a trainer, and then who could they help? Because the truth is one of my biggest troubles in life is I don't have excuses. And that's because I've had too many good people in my life. I had good parents. I had great instructors. I had brilliant professors at university. I had amazing friends along the way. And so for me, if I mess this up and I hurt students, or I steal, I take advantage of people, or I come into the classroom and I just don't look to better people, that's on me, because I was taught better than that. My whole life I was taught better. And so when I come into the classroom, the reason I structure, and you've seen it, the reason I structure my classes a certain way, and the reason I try to keep asking, do you have any questions for me, guys? And don't forget, when you leave this place, I want you to be different than other instructors, because there's too many, I'll say, basic instructors that aren't very good at their job. The reason I keep pushing that is because I was pushed the same way. My professor at university, all of those professors, they all did the same thing to me. They always wanted Mr. Shaw to be really, really good at his job. And so that's, to go back to the original question, if I had a goal and objective, it's just to make the best out of the best trainers coming up, the next generation. Because the ones we have, it's part of the reason I made this whole online presence and social media, is because I see too many people selling out to make money, and I don't see a lot of people trying to sell out to help other people or tell the truth. And so that's the long-winded version of that, Mark, if that makes sense.
Sure. Well, I can definitely appreciate that. And again, from instructor to instructor, I know I was your student one time, and I've seen a lot of instructors, and there are a lot of what I call cookie cutters out there. Following the genre, of the recent, whatever platforms they're on, you look at them, they're mostly all the same.
Yes.
Mostly all the same media edits on there, so, and I can appreciate that, because everybody will hopefully become a different flavor of instructor, if you will, and you're not teaching young high school kids, you're teaching grown adults, for the most part, that do have families, you do have all this other stuff going on, full-time jobs, part-time jobs, single mother, single father, aunts, uncles, so I appreciate you realizing that, because some other instructors, that I've witnessed and personally observed, they don't kind of take that into consideration, and it's all about filling your class out, filling your students out, and just knowing where they're at, especially on their learning curves, and who wants this and who wants it more, and there's a lot that goes into being an instructor.
Yes.
People are dependent on you.
Yes, sir.
People want that knowledge.
So any last closing remarks at all? Any closing statements, Mark?
Like I said before, personal training, training yourself, getting into the gym, eating, it's got to be a lifestyle, and one that take serious. You know, whether you're just getting into it, you know, I think it's going to help everybody in the long run. You know,
Yes,
as we get further in age, you know, it's just one of those things that'll help us be a little bit stronger, a little bit better, you know, in those older times, and you know, kind of get that little bell curve going.
Yes, sir.
But as always, you know, keep living, keep loving, keep working out, and be good or be good at it. That's my
Yes,
final say in this chapter.
Yes, sir. Well, appreciate
sir.
you on the show, sir.
Thank you, Mr.
very
Small.
much. And you know, guys, appreciate you guys watching and everything. And it's great to have Marc, great to have a next generation of the continuous trainers, people that actually take this seriously, want to make a difference in people's lives.
My pleasure.
There's a lot of folks that don't take it seriously as a job, so it's good to have you on, man. And I'll put all of his social medias in the description, so you don't have to do a shout out here. But yeah, we'll have all those in the description. Thanks, guys, for watching. Catch you on the next one. And if you haven't been outside, go outside. Thanks.